We've brought together two of history's most profound thinkers in a simulated dialogue powered by cutting-edge AI. Friedrich Nietzsche, the fierce critic of traditional morality, who championed the will to power and the rise of the Übermensch, enters into conversation with Jesus of Nazareth, the spiritual teacher whose message of unconditional love, humility, and divine grace has shaped the moral fabric of civilizations for over 2 millennia. Their exchange begins with a single, enduring question. What is the true source of morality in a world searching for direction?
Morality. Let us not begin by sanctifying it. Let us begin by questioning its origin, its usefulness, its hidden instincts. What is called good has never been universal, and those who preach it often wear masks. I do not ask what morality ought to be. That is the trap of the slave. I ask, what forces produced it? Who benefits from it? What does it conceal? The dominant morality of the West, mercy, humility, self-sacrifice, this is not the morality of strength. It is the morality of the weak, a reactive morality, born not from creation, but from resentment. The nobleman in ancient times did not ask, is this action good for all? He asked, is this action an expression of my power, my vitality, my excellence? From this instinct, joyful, assertive, unashamed, a different morality arose, one of affirmation, not denial. Then came the inversion. The weak, unable to conquer in life, declared strength to be evil and weakness a virtue. The lambs, trembling before the lion, rewrote the story. They created the fiction of a higher judge, invisible, omnipotent, who favored the downtrodden and condemned the proud. Thus was born what I called the slave morality, perfected in Christianity, which transformed suffering into a badge of honor and turned guilt into a spiritual weapon. Where does morality come from? From instincts, from wills, from social battles, from the victorious cry of the strong, or the bitter whisper of the defeated. There is no absolute. There is only perspective, power, and the stories we choose to believe. Morality is not divine. It is human, and often all too human. So I urge you, do not kneel before values without asking who placed them on the altar. Do not accept good and evil as cosmic truths. Look deeper. Often, beneath the halo, you will find a chain.
You ask where morality comes from, and I say, from love. Not love as sentiment, nor as strategy, but love as the heartbeat of existence, as the law written not on tablets of stone, but upon the human heart. It does not emerge from the will to power, but from the will to serve. It is not born of conquest, but of communion. You speak of slave morality as though humility and compassion are signs of decay. Yet what greater power is there than to forgive one's enemies, to bless those who curse you? The one who restrains vengeance, who refuses to mirror hatred, is he weak? Or is he stronger than the one who dominates with force? I tell you, true strength is found not in domination, but in the ability to love without condition. Morality is not a construct to manipulate the masses. It is an invitation to become more than what we are, to see the image of God in each person, including the poor, the outcast, the criminal, the enemy. It is not reactive, it is radically proactive. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Not because it ensures your survival, but because it reflects the deepest truth of your being, that you are not alone, and never were. When I walked among you, I did not seek thrones or temples. I washed feet. I ate with sinners. I broke bread with traitors. And I said, love one another as I have loved you. That is not weakness. That is the source of all enduring morality. Where does morality come from? It comes from the Father, who is love. It flows into the world through the lives of those who act with grace, who sacrifice not out of submission, but out of freedom. For what is more free than to choose to love when one could hate?
You speak of love as though it were untouched by history, by instinct, by the hunger that drives all life. But I ask, is your love truly pure, or is it the most subtle form of domination? You call upon sacrifice, upon turning the other cheek, as though this were strength. Yet I see in it a dangerous ideal, one that teaches humanity to suppress its instincts, to fear its own greatness, to call its vitality sin. You speak of freedom in surrender. I call that a contradiction. True freedom is not found in denying the self, but in becoming fully oneself. Become who you are. That is my challenge. A morality that demands self-sacrifice, that glorifies weakness, that turns suffering into sanctity. Such a morality does not elevate man, it enchains him. It teaches him to feel guilty for his passions, to mistrust his desires, to live forever in the shadow of some distant perfection he can never attain. You say morality flows from the Father. But where is this Father? I see no evidence of a celestial legislator. What I see is a long chain of power, of institutions that claim divine backing to preserve their control. Churches that speak of love while building empires. Priests who wield guilt like a sword. Is this love? Or is it the cleverest mask power has ever worn? Do not mistake tenderness for truth. Do not sanctify suffering because it is all one has known. The lion does not ask the lamb for permission to roar. Morality must be created anew, not inherited. It must be forged by those who dare to live dangerously, who affirm life even in its cruelty. Not those who flee from pain, but those who use it as fire to shape the self. So I ask again, where does your morality lead? To transcendence or to obedience?
You ask where my morality leads, and I answer, to a kingdom not of this world, but already stirring within it, a kingdom where the last are first, and the meek inherit the earth. You see obedience as enslavement, but I call it alignment, not with the laws of men or the lusts of the will, but with the eternal rhythm of divine love. For the one who loses his life for the sake of love finds it. You speak of becoming who you are, but who are you if not a child of God, not a beast of instinct or a machine of power, but a being capable of compassion, forgiveness, mercy? Are these not the deepest truths of the soul, deeper than any urge to dominate? You say guilt is a chain, but what is guilt if not the soul recognizing its dissonance with the good? And what is grace if not the hand that breaks that chain? You see in the church a distortion, and you are not wrong. Power has corrupted even those who speak my name. But do not judge the river by the mud that clings to its banks. Return to the source. Look to the heart of my message, not the institutions that have faltered in embodying it. I did not come to affirm life as it is, but to transform it, to call each person beyond their appetites, beyond the illusion that power alone gives meaning. What profits a man if he gains the whole world, yet loses his soul? Morality is not repression, but resurrection, the raising of the human heart toward what is most noble, most divine. The morality I offer does not suppress the self, it redeems it.
What a powerful exchange we've just witnessed. Nietzsche and Jesus have laid bare two fundamentally different visions of where morality begins and where it leads. Here is our second guiding prompt. Is morality universal, or does it depend on culture, history, and perspective? Let us listen now as Friedrich Nietzsche responds first.
Universal morality? That is the most seductive illusion of all. To speak of morality as if it were fixed, eternal, the same across all cultures and ages. That is to deny the very dynamism of life. Morality is not a mountain peak reached once and forever. It is a shifting landscape, carved by history, by power, by necessity. Consider this. The morality of the warrior differs from that of the priest. The morality of the hunter-gatherer is not that of the industrial worker. What one age calls virtue, another calls vice. In ancient Rome, honor meant conquest. In modern Europe, it came to mean restraint. Who changed the meaning? And why? Because morality is not universal. It is perspectival. It is a mirror held up to the needs, fears, and fantasies of a particular culture at a particular moment. Even the so-called golden rules, do unto others, love thy neighbor, are not universal in practice. They emerge in certain religious traditions, often among oppressed peoples where survival depended on solidarity and meekness. In other contexts, say the sagas of Norsemen or the samurai code, honor demanded vengeance, strength, unflinching pride. Were they immoral or simply different? I do not reject morality. I reject its pretense of absoluteness. I call for a revaluation, not to destroy values, but to birth them anew. We must become artists of value, sculpting our ethics with awareness, not sleepwalking through inherited dogmas. To live well is not to obey a timeless code, but to affirm the world, to shape it with eyes open. So no, morality is not universal. It is a dance with history, and those who pretend otherwise are either tyrants or fools.
You are right to say that the expressions of morality vary, that cultures dress virtue in different garments, and that history bends language to its will. But behind the masks, there is a face. Beneath the rituals, a pulse. Morality is not a costume of convenience. It is a reflection of the eternal light that shines in every human soul. Yes, perspectives shift, but truth does not dissolve with time. Consider love, not as sentiment, but as selfless will, the act of seeking the good of the other, even at cost to the self. Has this ever ceased to be good? Across the sands of time, have we not always known, somewhere deep, that betrayal wounds, that injustice cries out, that compassion heals? These are not inventions of culture, they are echoes of the divine. You point to vengeance as noble in some ages, and yet where did vengeance ever heal the human heart? When has retribution restored the dignity it claimed to avenge? You praise the sagas of conquest, but I ask, what did they leave behind but ruins and bones? Do these shifting moralities lift the soul, or do they merely amplify the noise of survival? I do not deny that culture colors morality, but color is not chaos. The rainbow dances across the sky, yet all its hues emerge from the same light. In the same way, morality may take many forms, but its source remains. That source is love, not love invented by man, but the love through which man was made. So I say, yes, morality can be distorted, misused, even reversed. But the compass still points north, and that compass is written not by empires, but by the Creator in every human heart.
You speak of love as a compass, as though it were inscribed on the heart by some divine hand. But even love, that most cherished of virtues, is not immune to examination. What you call love, is it always good? Is it not, at times, a form of weakness masquerading as virtue? A fear of conflict dressed in gentleness? A denial of pain? When pain is the very crucible through which greatness is forged, I do not deny that love exists, but I ask, what kind of love? There is the love of the Creator for His creation, the artist for his art, the mother for her child. Yes, life-affirming, generous, but there is also the love that smothers, that clings, that refuses to let the beloved grow. There is a love that forgives too easily, that shelters cowardice, that sanctifies surrender. Such love does not elevate. It infantilizes. You claim that vengeance never healed the heart, and I agree. But neither does a morality that demands one forever turn the other cheek, deny oneself, suppress one's instincts in favor of some abstract good. The denial of vengeance is noble only if one has first known the power to avenge. Otherwise, it is not forgiveness. It is impotence. What you call universal morality, I call selective memory. You appeal to what is highest in man, yet you ask him to deny what is deepest. You speak of eternal truths, yet these truths have changed with every age. Morality, as it is preached, often serves those who preach it. It tames the wild spirit of humanity in favor of control, predictability, and obedience. But I say, morality must not be a cage. It must be a forge. Let us not worship sameness across time and culture. Let us embrace the storm, the fierce dance of values, and in that chaos, forge new stars.
You speak of morality as a forge, fierce, blazing, creative. I understand that vision. There is truth in it. Humanity must grow, must test its values in the fire of experience. But what you call a forge, I call a furnace that, without love, can reduce rather than refine. Fire, without direction, does not forge, it consumes. Yes, love can be distorted. It can be used to control, to suffocate, to deny. But that is not love's failure. It is the failure of those who misunderstand its power. True love does not weaken, it liberates. It does not cling, it empowers. It calls each soul not to dissolve into the crowd, but to discover their truest self, not apart from others, but through the bond of sacred relationship. You say morality changes, and in its surface forms it does. But what of the deeper longing within every human being to be known, to be safe, to belong, to matter? This does not shift with empire or tribe. This is the root from which all moral visions grow, even if the branches twist in many directions. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is an act of immense strength, the strength to end the cycle of violence when it would be easier to strike back. To love an enemy is not to surrender. It is to rise above the logic of retaliation and invite transformation, both in the other and within oneself. You speak of creating new stars, but stars are not made by will alone. They are born from collapse and pressure, yes, but also from the laws written into the fabric of the universe. In the same way, morality must be more than raw creation. It must align with the deeper order of love, justice, and truth that sustains the soul. To deny this is not freedom, it is drift.
This dialogue has now grown even richer, deeper, more daring. As we now enter our final chapter, let us end with this question, perhaps the most personal of all. Can morality exist without God? Nietzsche will begin.
Morality without God, not only can it exist, it must, if we are ever to be honest with ourselves. The death of God, as I proclaimed, was not a celebration, but a profound recognition of what had already begun. The old foundations had crumbled, yet we still wandered among their ruins, clinging to concepts, good, evil, justice, virtue, without remembering who first gave them breath. You see, when belief in God collapses, the entire scaffolding of morality must be rebuilt. To retain the moral code while discarding its divine author is to live in contradiction. It's to pick flowers from a garden whose roots we've severed and wonder why they wither. Secular humanists may speak of compassion, of rights, of equality. Noble words, but unanchored. Without God, who says the human has value? Without a divine lawgiver, what makes an action good, other than agreement or sentiment? But do not mistake me. I do not long for the return of God. I call for something braver, the creation of values by humanity itself, not inherited from on high, but forged in the crucible of life. We must become gods, or at least artists of our own moral landscape. That is the meaning of the Übermensch. Not a tyrant, but one who creates meaning where there is none, who says yes to life without needing a heavenly justification. God once served as the great guarantor of meaning. But if we are to grow, truly grow, We must face the abyss without illusion. We must love what is fragile, strive for what is just, and live with purpose, not because a deity commands it, but because we choose it. Only then does morality become ours, and only then are we free.
You speak of freedom, of man becoming his own God, his own lawgiver. It is a bold vision, yes, but one built upon a fragile foundation. You ask whether morality can exist without God. I ask, what sustains it when storms come? When consensus fails? When human strength falters? If morality is merely a creation of human will, it will reflect all that is noble in us and all that is not. It will mirror our love, but also our pride, our empathy, but also our fear. Without something beyond us to anchor it, morality risks becoming a reflection of power or preference, a shifting language spoken by the strongest voices in the room. You say we must face the abyss. I say we must look into it and still choose love, not because we invented it, but because we were first loved. That is the difference. Morality is not simply a tool or a choice. It is a response to the divine imprint within each of us, the whisper that reminds us, you were made for more than survival. You were made in the image of love. Without God, why forgive? Why sacrifice? Why care for the least among us when doing so gains us nothing? Secular answers often appeal to evolution, to empathy, to utility. But when these motives fail, when compassion demands more than comfort, when justice costs us dearly, something deeper must remain. That is where God enters, not as an enforcer, but as the source. I do not say that those who do not believe in God cannot live morally. Many do. But I ask, from where do they draw that strength, that conviction, when all seems meaningless? The well may still yield water, but it is God who filled it. Morality may survive without God, for a time. But to thrive, to endure, to transform, it must be rooted in something eternal.
You speak of the abyss as something to be soothed by the presence of God, as if the terror of meaninglessness can only be quelled by a divine whisper. But I say this, we must learn to look into the abyss and not flinch. To live without illusions is not despair, it is the highest courage. What you call fragility, I call lucidity. Morality, anchored in God, may endure, but it also immobilizes. It defines goodness by obedience, not creativity. It sanctifies the past rather than daring the future. You say divine love is the source of morality. I say that love has too often come with conditions, with hierarchies, with invisible chains. You are loved, but only if. You are good, but only if you believe. What masquerades as grace can often become coercion. To build morality without God is not to float in emptiness. It is to accept full responsibility for our values. It is to say, I do not act justly because I fear divine wrath, nor do I love because I expect reward. I act justly because I affirm the dignity of existence itself. I love because I recognize the beauty and fragility of life. That is enough. You ask, why forgive? I answer, because vengeance imprisons. Why sacrifice? Because sometimes, in choosing another's good over our own, we become larger than ourselves. Not because heaven records it, but because we become the kind of beings capable of that choice. That is morality without divine surveillance, rooted not in fear or hope, but in the will to uplift life. The well you speak of, perhaps it was once filled by God. But now, we must become the ones who dig deeper, who draw from the earth, who choose to care, not because we were commanded, but because we understand. That, to me, is the birth of moral maturity.
You speak of moral maturity as the full ownership of one's values, no longer tethered to divine command, no longer moved by hope or fear. You call this freedom, and yet I see a deeper freedom, not in detachment from the divine, but in union with it. You speak of choosing the good without surveillance, but the gaze of God is not surveillance, it is presence. It is not a watching eye that demands conformity, but a loving gaze that sees you entirely, even in your darkest moments, and still calls you worthy. That is not coercion, that is invitation. You ask, can we act with compassion, with justice, without divine promise? Yes, sometimes we can. But morality untethered may drift. It may serve justice today and self-interest tomorrow. It may exalt love today and efficiency tomorrow. A morality born purely of will, even at its most noble, will always be vulnerable to exhaustion, to self-justification, to pride. But a morality rooted in God does not depend on our strength alone. It flows from a deeper source, one that does not waver. To love because you were first loved, that is not weakness. That is the greatest security a soul can know. Not to be good because you fear judgment, but because you have known mercy and cannot help but extend it. You speak of digging deeper wells, and I bless that. But I say this, the water you find has always been there. It is not of your making. It was placed in you before you knew to thirst. What you call moral clarity, I call grace awakening in you, often before you can name it. Morality without God may rise high, but morality with God is not just a tower, it is a home. And in that home, even the weary are welcomed.
What a profound journey we've taken. 12 turns, 2 voices, and 1 question that has echoed through the ages. Where does morality come from? This was never a debate to be won, but a dialogue to be honored. Now we turn to you, our viewers. Where do you believe morality comes from? What guides your conscience when the path isn't clear? And what happens to morality when the lights of certainty go out? Leave us your thoughts, reflections, and suggestions for future topics. Let's keep questioning, keep listening, and keep seeking what's true. Until next time, stay thoughtful.